And absenteeism has become chronic in Parliament. Well, that's the verdict of Parliamentary Monitoring Group, or DICRO, which is giving fresh revelations that as many as 33 members of Parliament absented themselves for more than 15 sitting days in the second session of Parliament. In line with Article 97, one of the 1992 Constitution, Speaker Bagbin, on the 4th of May 2022, referred 3 members of Parliament, including the Dom Kwabena Member of Parliament, Sarah Adwoa Safo, who has been absent for more than 40 days to the Privileges Committee. Well, just yesterday as well, we're learning that the majority side on that committee called for the seat of the embattled MP to be declared vacant. But there's a shocking revelation this afternoon contained in the latest reports released by DICRO, which says that it discovered that as many as 33 lawmakers are culpable of the same offense for which Sarah Adwoa Safo is being crucified for. The group wants 30 other MPs to be hauled before the same committee. So let's bring you a breakdown of this list, which DICRO has just released. We have number 1 on the list, obviously, Sarah Adwoa Safo from the Dom Kwabena constituency, absenting herself for as many as 40 seating days. Then we also know that Henry Quartey, who's explained himself to the Privileges Committee, is also captured here with some 30 days being absent. There's also Ejenim Boateng Kweku, who's the Brekum West Member of Parliament, absenting himself for 28 days. Joe Gate is there on the list. The Sikado Kitan MP missing some 28 days as well. There's the Health Minister, Kweku Ajimamenu, who's MP for Doma Central, 24 days. And we have the Information Minister, Kojo Ponkruma, who's representing the Ofose Ayirabi constituency, missing in action for some 24 days as well. Ignatius Bafoewa, who happens to be the Employment Minister for MP also for Sunyani West, was also missing, as we're getting from this very latest report, that he was missing and absent for 25 sitting days. There is Thomas Mbobma, who happens to be the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister as well, MP for Tatale. He has also been missing in action for close to 24 days. And then comes the Communications Minister and MP for Ablekuma West, Esla Kufu, who's been reported here on the list for absenting herself for some 21 days. But we also do know that Ken Ohene Ejempong, who's MP for the Asin Central area, is also missing on that list. And the list is quite a tall one, about 30 names which DICRO is giving. But then there's a lot happening as we speak on this issue of absenteeism. It's time now for us to cross over to Parliament, where there's a lot happening right now. The Privileges Committee is raising a lot of issues relating to absenteeism. And also the embattled MP Sarah Adwoa Safo's matter has come before the House. Let's listen in briefly, and then we'll bring in the reaction of DICRO on this matter.
Of the 8th Parliament of the 4th Republic of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, my initial issue has to do with procedure. And I said, I'm convinced that this matter should not be subjected to a motion that will then need the approval of Parliament. My colleague started by saying that there is a precedent. If a precedent is bad and cannot be foundation on the Constitution, you cannot foist it on Parliament. Let's begin. He cites one example. Let's begin. You are aware that for 6 years since the inception of the 4th Republic, resolutions in this House were approved by 2/3 majority in this House. Until we entered this House and the issue came up that what Parliament had been doing for 6 years was unfortunately not based on the Constitution. Justice Annan was the Speaker. So what precedent had taken place for 6 years was dismantled in a day. It was bad precedent. And then resolutions, more than 500 resolutions had been passed by this House, predicated on 2/3 majority. The fact that it was bad could not be justified by the fact that it had precedents. So a wayward precedent should not have any effect on this House. Mr. Speaker, that's the first lesson to him. Mr. Speaker, now the issue that he raises about Article 97. Mr. Speaker, for his elucidation, Article 97, we all do know, provides Mr. Speaker, we're talking about constitutional imperatives, not personal sentiments. Mr. Speaker, Article 97 that he read provides, a member of Parliament shall vacate his seat in Parliament. A says, upon a dissolution of Parliament. If Parliament is dissolved, vacancy is declared for all of us, collectively and individually. There is that automaticity. Mr. Speaker, B says, if he's elected Speaker of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, the Speaker of Parliament, Speaker Adwoa Safo, was a member of Parliament, duly elected by his constituents. When he was nominated and indeed elected as Speaker of Parliament, the Speaker, immediately after the election, his seat fell vacant. There was that automaticity. The Speaker, now let's come to 97. 1C. It says, a member of Parliament shall vacate his seat in Parliament if he is absent without the permission in writing of the Speaker. That's the first leg. The Speaker, those three people, if they had sought your permission and you had granted the permission, you would not have referred their conduct in the first place to the Privileges Committee. It stands to reason that they flouted that first leg. That is why he referred their conduct to the Privileges Committee. The Speaker, the second leg now states, if he's absent without the permission in writing to the Speaker and is unable to offer reasonable explanation to the Parliamentary Committee on Privileges from 15 sittings of a meeting of Parliament during any period that Parliament has been summoned to meet and continues to meet. The Speaker, that is what the committee was tasked to investigate, whether they have reasonable excuse after not having sought your permission, whether they have reasonable excuse to have absented themselves. Mr. Speaker, that is what the three of them were required to do, to submit themselves to the Privileges Committee, to justify whether or not they had reasonable excuse. Mr. Speaker, the Privileges Committee has submitted their report. And my considered opinion, based on the Constitution, not on sentiment, is that there should be that automaticity once the committee makes a determination. My colleague is saying that it should be decided by the House. I disagree with him. There's no constitutional basis for what he's saying. Mr. Speaker, I say so because he himself has not cited any constitutional provision to that effect. He is speaking to his sentiments, which has no relevance as far as this matter is concerned. Mr. Speaker, Article 112 provides that once the determination has been made and the vacancy has fallen, 1125 says, whenever a vacancy occurs in Parliament, the Clerk to Parliament shall notify the Electoral Commission in writing within 7 days after the vacancy occurred, and a by-election shall be held within 30 days after the vacancy occurred. Mr. Speaker, the determination of the committee is born in a report that is submitted to this House. And that report is not for the consideration and voting on by this plenary. It is for the information of the House that the determination has been made. Mr. Speaker, my colleague appears to be arguing that no committee can make such a decision that will bind the entire House. He's totally wrong. Mr. Speaker, let's deal with what is contained in Article 106. Article 106, sub 13. Article 106, sub 13 provides, and again for his elucidation, I'll read, where it is determined by a committee of Parliament appointed for the purpose that a particular bill is of an urgent nature, the provisions of the preceding clauses of this article other than clause 1 and paragraph A of clause 2 shall not apply, and accordingly the President shall give his assent to the bill on its presentation for assent. The Speaker, the committees of this House has the authority to determine the urgency of a bill. Once they make the determination, it binds all of us. Plenary has no business in this. People should understand that. So this is not the first time a committee is authorized to make a declaration on behalf of the House. Again, Mr. Speaker, let the minority leader address his mind to Article 177 of this Constitution, which provides Mr. Speaker, Article 177 is on the creation of the contingency fund and how funds can be withdrawn from the contingency fund. It provides, there shall be paid into the contingency fund monies voted for the purpose by Parliament, and advances may be made from that fund which are authorized by the committee, not Parliament, authorized by the committee responsible for financial measures in Parliament, whenever the committee is satisfied that there has arisen an urgent or unforeseen need for expenditure for which no other provision exists to meet the need. So in that case, it doesn't come to plenary. Mr. Speaker, fancy a situation where the finance minister makes a request to the committee authorizes him to maybe withdraw about 50 million Ghana cedis from the contingency fund. And then the report comes, and then you, Parliament, says that you don't subscribe to that. What happens? What might have happened would be that the minister, after spending the money, your committee having agreed to that, then you charge the committee for causing financial loss. Is that your understanding of the Constitution? Not totally wrong. Mr. Speaker, so committees of this House have the authority in these three specific areas to carry on what is required of them, the authority that they have been clothed in by the Constitution. So my colleague is totally out of sorts, with the greatest respect to him. He's my friend, and he sounded that he was going to use hard language. Mr. Speaker, I believe I have restrained myself in not using hard language. I've been very circumspect, but I believe that I'm right. He's totally wrong. So, Mr. Speaker, the point I'm making is that this motion ought not to have been listed for the House to approve of the report of the Privileges Committee. That is totally an absurdity. That is it. So, Mr. Speaker, that is the legal position. And I challenge him to use the Constitution to disprove what I'm saying. Mr. Speaker, he quoted the standing orders. I will suggest to him that, yes, the standing orders is supposed to be a product of the Constitution, but between the standing orders and the Constitution takes precedence. We should know that. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Well, so what you have on the screens right now are excerpts of what's happening in Parliament, where the majority leader has been mounting a spirited defense for the side of the majority in terms of the Privileges Committee's report on the absenteeism case of 3 MPs. That ought to stand, as opposed to what the minority is saying, that a determination has to be made by Speaker Alban Bagbin. We know that the highlight of this involves Sarah Adwoa Safo, who we understand from this latest report that we're seeing, for instance, from Odikro, that she's been absent for close to 40 days, but the list goes on, and we'll definitely be crossing back to the floor as and when we have a directive from the Speaker. But let's bring in Kina Likimani, who's the Director of Special Programs at Odikro. Thank you so much for joining us. So you've been monitoring as well, just as we're doing here, what it is that the Speaker of Parliament has been saying, and the majority leader as well, advocating that the seat of Sarah Adwoa Safo should be declared vacant. Even as we wait to cross over back to the chambers, what's your initial take on the arguments from the majority side? You'd have to unmute for me, first of all.
Yeah, good afternoon to your viewers, and thank you for having Odikro on the show. Well, I think that there's always been an issue with look, we at Odikro, let me just say, we are excited we've been talking about absenteeism for a while, and usually we do the report. The main target of our absenteeism report is the Speaker of Parliament, but of course, Ghanaian citizens are the beneficiaries. And so every time we do this report, we send the information to the speaker, previous speakers, and nothing really happens. We talk about it. This year, of course, because of political maneuverings and hung parliament, the speaker has opened the door. And so even to be discussing, to be listening to majority leaders on parliament discussing privilege, absenteeism on the floor is exciting and unprecedented. And we hope that I'm not going to talk about procedure. The law, the constitution is clear. Let me qualify and say that it is absent without permission. So it's not just being absent without permission. There are, in the votes and proceedings, you can be listed as present, absent with permission, and then plain old absent.
This is
me also clarify.
I'm sorry, and I'm sorry for this. This is just starting. In fact, we need to listen in once more to what the speaker, the speaker's directive is. We'll definitely cross back to you and get your reactions to what's happening in Parliament as we speak. So we can just cross over to the House right now and get the thoughts of the speaker, as we see in our shots there. Of course, doing some consultations. We'll see and await what the directives will be. But let's cross you over to Parliament.
Was objecting to it by saying that it should not be a motion, but rather a statement. I was rather confused. Mr. Speaker, why am I saying this? I came to meet seniors in this House, including your good self and the chairman of Business Committee. Mr. Speaker, whatever we are doing is what the Ghanaian public is learning from. And this is good that we've been told that this is not the first time that a privileges committee has report has come to this floor. And Mr. Speaker, if you may consider, the first day you did the referral, there were objections. So because of that, the whole world is watching how this case will end. And Mr. Speaker, that is why when we were promised to adjourn at 1, and it happened that we were able to extend the time up to 3, and they said you were coming, I was pushing that such a sensitive matter cannot be played with only extra time or injury time. Mr. Speaker, this House needs ample time for seniors like Honorable Katie Hammond, Honorable Obi Amwa, Honorable Mama Yarga, Honorable Dominica Imi, Honorable Bernard Anyafo, Honorable Collins Dowda, the first presiding lawyer, Honorable Moses Cletus Advoca. Mr. Speaker, for them to be able to do insightful debate in the Parliament of Ghana for posterity to judge how their earlier leaders handled such matters. So I was not happy that the motion was being moved. And the Speaker, my doubt was confirmed when the most senior person in the House was even confused. Mr. Speaker, the motion had not been put there for the first time. This motion had been on this other paper. And when the distinguished minority leader drew our attention to what a motion is, a motion calls for something to be done. And that the thing that the motion calls for it to be done, that is why almost about 100 and something minority members are here. I don't know that for the sake that, Mr. Speaker, we are about 120 and they are 55. For fear that you are going to lose the vote, you are saying you want statement. We won't give you statement. We will vote and you will lose. Mr. Speaker, we are ever ready. We are not calling. You will lose.
Honorable Katie Hammond.
When
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Deputy Minority. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Deputy Minority Chief Whip drawn me into the argument. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say one or two. Mr. Speaker, I see the matter to fall within a very extremely short compass, Mr. Speaker. It seems to me we come to a point where, Mr. Speaker, you may have to take a decision by yourself. And the reason, Mr. Speaker, I say this is this. Even though I wanted my colleague to give me a copy of the Amwati decision, I still don't have it. But, Mr. Speaker, reading Article 97, which is at the center of all of this, critically, Mr. Speaker, more so after the earlier consultation my leader, myself, and the Honorable Minority Leader, Mr. Speaker, had, I am tempted to think that, Mr. Speaker, you may have to have a good look at the 97(1)(c) and look at the critical wording, and, Mr. Speaker, take us through what you believe is the bone of contention. Let me take it for the sake of completeness. Let's take the whole argument. Mr. Speaker, the 97(1) says that a member of Parliament shall vacate his seat. It could be his or her. We are talking about her now. Her seat in Parliament. Mr. Speaker, the matters are listed, but I think the critical one is, Mr. Speaker, C.
Honorable K.T. Hammond, I thought I was drawing the attention of the House to the fact that we haven't yet gotten there.
No, Mr. Speaker, if you allow me a couple of minutes, I will tell you the meat, the gravamen of the point I'm making, and that probably would resolve it for all of us. Give me 2 seconds, let me develop my point.
The preliminary objection that has been raised, is that what you are addressing?
On that, because I think in the end, ultimately, the matter, the solution for the issue, Mr. Speaker, that is arisen, lies in your interpretation of the C. So all these debates, Mr. Speaker, won't arise. And it's this, Mr. Speaker, it says this, that the Speaker, if the person is absent without permission in writing, the Speaker, writing of the Speaker, and he is unable to offer explanation to the Parliamentary Committee on Privileges from 15 sittings of the meeting of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, it would appear to me to say that as soon as that critical landmark is hit, the matter resides in the Parliamentary Committee of Privileges. Mr. Speaker, so it is for you really, Mr. Speaker, as far as my understanding is concerned, this matter, to look critically at this. If you decide that, yes, this is what the Constitution says, all these debates, all this as well, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't arise. The matter now rests in your motion. If we accept that the explanation or the critical interpretation of Mr. Speaker, the C, is embedded in those few critical words. That seems to me to be the way forward. Because if that is the case, then we wouldn't be arguing, they wouldn't have the opportunity. It is for you, Mr. Speaker, to make the critical decision based on the wording of C. Mr. Speaker, those are my words.
So it has been declared, but what are you saying? When you yell, then your problem. I mean, media, and it's a media.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Ordinarily, we will take a cue from the speakership that perhaps the issue has not arisen, but he has indirectly raised it and made an application to you that the motion which has been slated as part of the business of the day should be struck out, that we should not take that motion. And he premises his application to you on some constitutional grounds. That is why we feel obliged to assist you with some responses to the constitutional issues that he is raising before you decide whether to grant his application as to whether this motion should be taken or not taken, or that indeed whether or not there should be a motion. That's what he is saying. Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very serious matter. And as you indicated, there is some legitimate source of confusion. Article 97 is stating that if a member is absent without your permission for 15 days and the matter is referred to the Privileges Committee and is unable to offer reasonable explanation to the Privileges Committee, then the seat is vacated. The question then is, Mr. Speaker, what is the procedure? He is saying that the procedure is that the committee completes its work, then the committee's recommendation is conclusive. How it is conclusive, we don't know. But then, it is not the committee's recommendation that concludes the matter. It is not the committee's recommendation. So if the committee, does the committee determine that the seat is vacant? No. Some other person is to determine that the seat is vacant. Now, between the committee's work and the conclusion of the committee's work and the person determining that the seat is vacant, what is the procedure? Because, Mr. Speaker, we noticed that you came to this house, you read an elaborate statement, you made a statement in which you demonstrated that you had done research which showed that some members of Parliament have absented themselves beyond the acceptable number of days. And on the basis of your finding, you refer the matter to the Privileges Committee. And we know, Mr. Speaker, that the Constitution itself states that this House should determine its own rules beyond rules provided by the Constitution and in accordance with the Constitution. So, you have referred it to the committee. The committee has concluded its work. What is the procedure? The standing order is clear. And if you go to order 164, 164 is stating that there shall be a committee of privileges which shall consist of the first deputy speaker as chairperson and not more than 30 other members. It shall be the duty of the committee by order of the House to inquire into any complaint of contempt of Parliament or breach of privilege or any matter of privilege which may be referred to it, and to recommend to the House, such action as the committee may consider appropriate. Recommend to the House such action as the committee may consider appropriate. Now, another provision of our standing orders, Order 212, deals with reports of committees. And 212 says that every committee, 2121, every committee to which a matter is referred shall report to the House before the end of each session of Parliament. So, report to the House. How do you report to the House? Who is the House? Who is the House? Mr. Speaker, who is the House? report to the House. Mr. Speaker, now, when you report to the House, let's be mindful that you are being given a constitutional obligation to determine the fate of an individual. And the Constitution is clear in Article 296 how we deal with the exercise of discretionary power. In exercising discretionary power, Mr. Speaker, Article 296, Mr. Speaker, says that where in this Constitution, any other law, discretionary power is vested in any person or authority, that discretionary power shall be deemed to imply a duty to be fair and candid. The exercise of discretionary power shall not be arbitrary, capricious, or biased either by resentment, prejudice, or personal dislike, and shall be in accordance with due process of law. What is due process of law? What is due process of law? So it says that a person is unable to offer reasonable explanation. A person is unable to offer reasonable explanation. Now, this is a cardinal component of that constitutional provision. So a report has to come to this House, and the committee has to demonstrate to this House that the person was given the opportunity to exercise reasonable explanation, and the person did not provide reasonable explanation. Now, this House has to be transparent. We need to debate it. We need to assess it. So if the report is not to this House for us to consider, to debate, to interrogate, even, Mr. Speaker, if we are not even going to vote on it, at least we must debate it and examine the reasonableness of the conclusion of the committee. It cannot be that the committee will just meet and then make a recommendation to the Speaker. It doesn't say so. It doesn't say a recommendation to the Speaker. It says the committee concludes that the person is unable to provide reasonable explanation to the committee. So, Mr. Speaker, we plead that let's follow our own standing orders, which says that a report of the committee must come to us, a recommendation should be made to us, and if a recommendation is made to us, naturally, we must take a decision on the recommendation. Mr. Speaker, on that note, I will urge you to reject his application. Reject his application before you, that a business that you have endorsed and which has been captured on the order paper should be struck out. Mr. Speaker, we urge you to reject the application of the majority leader on this matter. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, that has recognized the difficulty involved in operationalization of this article. Even the Court of Appeal did so. What I can say now, I have listened to you. I'll have to consult the old lady. I am going to consult the old lady just now, and then you will also have to listen to me. And so just give me 2 minutes. I'm consulting the old lady.
That has the concluding, just a brief pause actually, on a very hilarious note there, but very serious matters unfolding there in Parliament on so many issues. But for Odikro, the belief is there are 40 or 30 more MPs who should be on that butcher board this afternoon. Kina Likimani, Director of Special Programs at Odikro, is still with us. So you've been monitoring the activity so far. What's your take on the arguments that we've heard so far? You're shying away from procedure, but it appears that it's key in the determinations that will be made later this evening. You'd have to unmute for me, Kina, so we can hear you. Yes, okay, I can hear you. That's fine. Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes.
The seat should be declared vacant. You can't look at the data. She was absent 40 days out of 41. Again, let me state that it is absent without permission. It's a very simple form that has to be filled out. It's a one-page form. So calling your majority leader to say, "Oh, Honorable Senior, I'm traveling," is not seeking permission. It's a simple form you have to fill. So the Honorable MP for Domi Kwabenya did not fill this form 40 occasions. She didn't even fill it once and provide a range of a date. We are here because we are here. In fact, we are here not only because she has grossly violated the absenteeism, the attendance provision, Article 97(1). We are here because this has been a chronic problem, and because some MPs know that the Parliament doesn't address this issue. There was always going to be that one case that will, I suppose, we will have to pay attention to. So I'm not surprised that they are going back and forth on this issue of procedure. I have to commend the Right Honourable Bagwin for even having gotten us here. Because let me tell you something about Honourable Kennedy Japan, for instance. If we compile the data and he is not on the list of absenteeism, we don't even trust our data. So there are 33 MPs. And every year there's around that figure. As you were reading the list out, you notice that a number of them are ministers. And it is Odikro's position that the constitutional provision that requires ministers, the executives to choose ministers that are also MPs, that has to go. But it's not all the minister MPs who absent themselves without permission. Minister MPs even have more staff than ordinary MPs. So you can even have somebody fill it out for you. Some of them, they attend statutory meetings. So again, what is preventing MPs from filling it out? And there are 33. And let me say that every time we talk about this issue, we never also talk about those that are doing very well. There are about some 30 or so MPs that have perfect records, including, I think, the MP for Navrongo Central, the MP for Ketu South, Honorable Gomachi. There's a list. There are 116 who only absented themselves twice. The implications of this really is that Ghana can be run by half the number of MPs that we have. Let me also say that when an MP is on the absenteeism list, of course it is disrespectful to their speaker, to their colleague MPs, to the citizens of this country. But imagine that you've been absent for 30 days out of 41 working days. And your boss says, "Oh, it's not a big deal. You didn't seek permission, but we are going to let you off." You receive your salary plus benefits, and you will also get ex gratia when the 4-year Parliament is dissolved because of elections. This has real monetary consequences for Ghanaians.
Right. What's more interesting, and what's more interesting in that statement that you released is the fact that from your checks, Ghanaians are getting fed up with that trend in the House. And then you go ahead to make another call that all of these 30 other MPs that are involved should be hauled before the Privileges Committee. In that regard, would you suggest that we unwind what's happening on the floor now and take the turns of the other 30 who are culpable of the very, crime for which Sarah Adwoa Safo's fate is being decided now?
But of course, that is not me asserting it. That's in the Constitution. That's in the standing orders of Parliament. And if in previous parliaments this has been the provision in the Constitution had been respected and adhered to by previous speakers, what is happening today wouldn't be unprecedented. It would be normal. You just ask MPs to come and explain themselves why they've been absent from Parliament for 15 days without permission. Some of them may have absolutely good reasons. I couldn't get to it. Maybe whatever, and it is decided upon. But how is it that people chronically miss work? Nobody calls them up on it. They get paid. They get the benefits of being MPs. And yet their constituencies are going without representation. When you started this program, you had a clip of a citizen in Domi Kwabenya they understand that this parliament, the first parliament, the first meeting sat for 41 days. Honorable Adwoa Safo was absent 40 days. For 40 days, Domiko Abenya had no representation on the floor. Now, the implications are that Domiko Abenya does not need representation, but we know that's not correct. Also, it is that maybe we need fewer members of parliament. But also it is that somebody, the MP must be made to answer why. Why? And so here we have, it's why?
So
not to have communications with the MPs through social media but why?
Interesting.
Domiko needs that response.
But I wish we could just take a look at the list again. Some interesting names there. Probably we could just get that on your screens right now, and for our viewers to also follow the number of MPs that you're referring to. So, for instance, you have Sarah Adwoa Safo topping the list there with some 40 days missing out in action. And then we have some more ministers who are also MPs. It appears that that's increasingly becoming a challenge, isn't it? You look at Esla Osei-Kufo, for instance, 21 days missing in action, and then the education minister as well.
Yeah, it's a big. Are we going to the floor?
Well, probably it's a good time now for us to turn to the Speaker of the House. We'll come back to you, definitely. This is, of course, the Joy News channel. For those of you who are watching us, the fate of the Domiko Abenya MP, Sarah Adwoa Safo, will be decided in just 2 minutes, as the Speaker promised. So let's listen into what it is that the directive is from the Speaker.
Honorable members, I have consulted the old lady. The old lady has given me an advice, and I think that advice is correct, because the issue raised by the majority leader is both of substantive and procedural law. And I need time to submit to this House a reasoned, written ruling. I cannot, in the haste of today, give you the ruling. In the circumstances, I will urge this House for us to call it a day. On return, I will deliver the written ruling. So I will proceed, looking at the time, to adjourn the proceedings after you have listened to the closing remarks of the leaders, if any. So I will, with your indulgence, call on the minority leader. I'll call on the minority leader to give his closing remarks.
Mr. Speaker.
Majority leader, yes.
Speaker, given how far we have come, I was going to make an application that the two of us submit our closing remarks, whilst maybe if you have something to say, you do say, and then we adjourn immediately. Yes.
Well, you can proceed to do so, and I'll follow suit with the same, and then we can call it a day. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, we have come to the end of this meeting. May I in the name of Almighty Allah, express gratitude to God for your life, for your health, and that of honorable members of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, let me thank everybody and thank all our colleagues and wish them.
Thanks for staying with us here on the Journey channel, and obvious that Parliament will rise without deciding the fate of the Dom Kobinya MP Sarah Adwoa Safo. So let me wrap up with you, Kina, on this. What's your expectation as we expect that obviously the Speaker will make that decision when the House reconvenes? Your final thoughts on this?
I have no, we can only hope that in fact the seat is declared vacant, but I have no idea what the Speaker is going to say, or what what this. I don't want to say it's a delay tactic. I assume they've reached some kind of procedural thing they need to sort out, but it's clear. It's clear because even being given an opportunity to address the committee was extended, and she did not, hasn't provided officially to Parliament an explanation. So it is clear. So we also think that a separate procedure should be put in place for the other 30, I suppose 29, because the other MPs on the list, the 29 or so on the list, to appear before the Privileges Committee to explain themselves. We hope that now that the door has been opened and the Privileges Committee has started this process, that for every meeting they will do so. It's not like 100 people, maybe it's 33, 35, so they can meet each of them, call them and bring them, and it should be something that we do because it's a constitutional provision. We wouldn't be talking about absenteeism without permission if it wasn't a constitutional provision.
Right, and
so it is. So Parliament has to do its job in that regard.
And just 30 seconds on this. We're getting indications that there are some review processes underway to reform the classification or definition of absenteeism. What's the take of Adikro on this? Briefly, just 30 seconds on this.
Well, there's been an issue with the 15 days. I think sometimes, is it a consecutive 15 or standalone 15? Either way, however they reconstitute on Parliament side, it's still a constitutional provision they have to adhere to. And we would hope that however they do it, they adhere to the provision, what the constitutional provision says about how to deal with absenteeism in Parliament. So it's in the Constitution. So they can, we will still want them to pay attention to it. We still want them to ask MPs on behalf of their constituency, bring them to explain themselves. It's in the Constitution.
All right then.
So how they want to do it is they still have to adhere to it. We are glad they are doing so now. Now there are 28 people to still go and talk to, so they should get to it.
Let's see what happens. Kina Ligamani, I'm grateful for your time here on The Pulse, and we'll see what the old lady will tell the Speaker.